Hello and welcome to another presentation that falls within the general purview of law, but more particularly the field of victimology. It all started in the 1930s when a man named Leopold Jean Z, a Hungarian psychiatrist, came up with an astounding new theory called Genetropism. And what he meant by this is that people, from gene, that had the similar genetics could be subconsciously attracted towards each other. So at the time it was a very surprising notion, but he pointed to a number of studies and carried out studies himself where he found that women that had been victims of violent alcoholic fathers and swore their whole lives never to be with a violent or an alcoholic man had a very high tendency to end up with exactly such a partner. So he asked himself whether there wasn't an attraction on a genetic basis, meaning that genetics manifested a certain behavior, as sociobiologists will tell you, and then that in between that behavior, on a subconscious level, they were attraction factors. So this was really the genesis and the beginning of victimology that only really got going in the 1950s. But he was the forefather of this. And then when we jump forwards and we look at interviews with serial killers, for example, Ted Bundy, it's very rare to catch a psychopath and a serial killer alive. They tend to be executed or kill themselves before they're apprehended. And Ted Bundy, before he was executed, said something very strange. When they asked him, how do you choose your victims? Because they wanted to learn something from this atrocious case, and he was an articulate and intelligent young man, he said, I don't choose them by chance. And so the people immediately jumped on it and said, what do you mean? And he said this very enigmatic phrase. He said, I choose victims according to asymmetrical gaits, which means people that somehow, or women in his case, sadly, that walked in an asymmetrical way. And so this remained in the minds of criminologists for many years, and finally they decided to do some studies. And they did a study where they took women and they asked them to walk for 15 seconds with only their backs being shown down a corridor, and either psychopaths that were in the carceral population watched, and they were asked, which women out of these women would you choose as a victim? And 1 out of 10 of these women had been victim of a terrible crime, of some type of predator. And amazingly and chillingly enough, I believe it was 79% of the psychopaths picked out the women who had been victim of previous crimes similar to the ones that had led them to prison. So I'd just like to make a very important caveat. This doesn't mean to suggest in any way, shape, or form that certain people provoke their victims or are in any way responsible for the crimes that happen to them, these atrocious crimes. But what it does mean is that in the field of victimology, we tend to study whether or not there's certain cues on an unconscious level that can explain the choice of certain victims, hoping to learn from those, of course, and avoid crime in the future. Thank you.